Hello YouTube. Bane666 here. As most of you probably know, I started this series of videos to expose the lie that Elliot Rodger was connected to the men's rights movement. But I am now expanding it to cover any falsehoods, misconceptions, misinformation, or outright lies spread about the MRM. So let's get stuck into it. Last episode I showed a number of people claiming to be doxxed by anti-gamergaters. A stray penguin pointed out, you need to add a note on the J-Roller tweet. He was faking shit the whole time. He can't be trusted. This doesn't entirely surprise me, as there are bound to be fakes on both sides looking for attention. But regardless, my point still stands, both sides have a fringe element that crosses the line. This is totally ignored when done by one group, while at the same time is presented as the norm for the other. This is obviously bias, and dishonest. What both sides should be doing, is condemning the extremists from both sides. But speaking of last episode. Next.
Hey YouTube, it's Laughing Witch. I'm gonna do another video. Okay, so this is an addendum to the video I did. I am now the leader of the Social Justice Warriors. Because in that video, I gave Karen Straughan the benefit of the doubt about her views.
You mean the video in which you called her a feminist, and said she secretly wanted to be a man?
And since then, I have gotten this blog from Manginas, which is a great blog, and I hope you follow it. I'm going to put the link in the low bar. But she listened to an interview with the Young Turks, and this is what this woman says. She actually said that female genital mutilation was beneficial because women have less UTIs and STDs.
Now, I have to say that I'm a big fan of Karen's work. She was one of the first MRAs I came across when I stumbled down the rabbit hole. She is extremely hardworking and knowledgeable. And she has been a big promoter of my channel. I'm guessing many of you even found your way here due to Karen. But if she actually was a promoter of female genital mutilation, as suggested here, I'd be the first one to criticize her for it, as I think all genital mutilation is wrong. But Manginas, aka Diana Boston, aka Sale Polani, is not a reliable source. Nor would I think Karen would support such a thing. And as it so happens, I also happen to have seen the interview in question. So let's have a look at what was actually said.
So when you say, let's just take the right to genital integrity first. I'm amused by that language, but so do you it's a wrong way of saying it, do you understand? Do you agree that female genital mutilation and circumcision are not the same thing, that there is a legitimate reason to do a male circumcision, which is health? Now, you might disagree on that, and I think a lot of people strongly disagree on whether there are good health reasons or not, but that's the main reason to do it. Whereas female genital mutilation, there is absolutely, positively no health consequences other than dire ones, and no benefits whatsoever, and it's done simply for, you know, the honor of old customs and the pleasure of men, theoretically, etc. Like that, there's a big difference there.
There are differences for sure. Some forms of FGM are actually less severe than the typical circumcision, less damaging, less permanent, and others, of course, are much worse. But one of the issues around that is that you can actually find studies that have been done in places like Yemen and stuff like that, where FGM is still practiced, that show the exact same health benefits. You know, a decrease in urinary tract infections, and a decrease in sexually transmitted infections and stuff like that. One of the things that most people don't know is that at least sort of secular communities in the U.S. in particular, circumcision began as a health issue, but it began during the nervous excitation theory of disease before we learned about germs and stuff like that. It was promoted by the guy who invented cornflakes, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, I believe. And it was promoted as a way of preventing masturbation because masturbation was viewed back then to contribute to mental illness and epilepsy and spina bifida and spinal cord diseases and paralysis and all kinds of things like that. And you can find justifications, you can find medical papers all through the history that, that circumcision cures mental illness, circumcision cures epilepsy, circumcision cures this, it cures that, it cures paralysis, spinal paralysis, it cures all of these things. So it really has been, at least in the sort of the secular community or the non-Jewish, Muslim communities, it has been a cure searching for a disease the whole time. Mm-hmm. And so there really is there's no explicit or definite health benefit
okay.
that you can provide as far as circumcising a minor child. That's really the thing. I think that any man should have the choice to do that. But 4-day-old babies don't have sex. They're not going to get STIs. The urinary tract studies, because most full-term babies were circumcised at the time, the uncircumcised ones were generally preemies in the study. And so, of course, they're going to be more susceptible to urinary tract infections and other health problems.
All right. Karen, I don't want to spend too much time on that.
There you go.
I got it. I mean, I don't agree that it has the same implications and that it's done for the same reasons. But I understand the things that you're laying out. People can decide on their own whether they're in favor of circumcision or not. But if it was intended to cure masturbation, I can assure the audience that it has not worked.
So I think it's clear she was countering but some people think MGM has medical benefits argument, with the same can be said for FGM. It doesn't mean either are correct argument. But of course, good old Sale Polanyi misrepresented this, and took it out of context. And failed to mention how harmful MGM is while at it. Apparently only females matter to Sale. But now that we have some context, let's continue with Insane Witch.
Now, the reason that they probably have less UTIs and STDs is because sex is agonizing. And they're basically made frigid.
No, actually, the point she was making was the MGM is beneficial because of studies argument is no different than the FGM is beneficial because of studies argument. And that both are bogus. But you'd know that if you actually watch the video, instead of just reading man cheese.
By this mutilation. So this woman is a horrible person. She is absolutely horrible. She then does what I said she didn't do. She goes on to say that she hasn't voted in 14 years and says women don't need the vote because of Mother Jones, the magazine, said so.
Okay, once again, let's look at the clip.
They were really concerned about the fact that they would have to take on all kinds of male responsibilities, that they would lose all kinds of privileges like the exemption from the draft, their right to financial support.
Karen, yada. Do you want the right to vote or not? Are you going to give a thank you to the women who fought so hard, sometimes risked their lives to get you that right to vote? Or are you going to just keep saying, oh, well, the women of Saudi Arabia love wearing their burqas, and the women in Britain who, while being oppressed and not having the right to vote, said, they like bending their neck and telling men that, yes, we shouldn't vote, we're silly little women. Are you going to give me a thank you for that, or are you just going to keep on blah-blah-blah on that?
Ridiculous. And frankly, I think the last time I voted was 14 years ago in a municipal election. Like Mother Jones often said, you don't need the vote to kick ass.
All right, that's okay. You're radical, Karen. You're absolutely ridiculously radical.
So the actual quote from Karen was, "You don't need the vote to kick ass." And the quote is from Mary Harris Jones, who is better known as Mother Jones. And despite what Laughing Witch thinks, Mary Harris Jones was not a magazine, but a labor activist in the early part of the 20th century. Although she does have a magazine named after her. The actual quote in question was, You don't need the vote to raise hell, but Karen was close enough. As for not voting, that's Karen's right and choice. I've always been of the opinion that if you are going to benefit from living in a democracy, then you have the responsibility to take part in that democracy and vote. But after the last federal election here in Australia, I'm reconsidering that viewpoint. But the point is, Canada, unlike Australia, doesn't have compulsory voting. Therefore it is her choice and not only who she votes for, but also if she votes at all. This logically doesn't mean she is against other women voting. And just like the FGM example before, if she was against women's right to vote, I'd be the first to call her on it. Next.
So she's trying to throw Mother Jones under the bus. Okay, so Karen Straughan is absolutely a despicable and horrible person. I'm not anti-trans, but this is a man.
I honestly don't see it.
If she came up to me and said, you know what, I'm trans, I would at least understand her positions. She is a woman who wants to see other women's genitals mutilated. That's so horrifying, I don't even have words for it.
How about the word bullshit?
So, whatever Bewildered Ape said, he didn't go far enough. Now, I know we don't want people talking like that shit on YouTube, and I can see that. But this is a horrible, horrible woman. I will link this in the low bar so that if you really have the guts to put yourself through 29 minutes of this woman's babble.
Which clearly, the laughing which has not done.
May the gods be with you, if there are gods, and if they are cruel. Otherwise, I also just wanted to bring up that I had said in my video I wasn't going to post any negative comments, and apparently that impressed people not to make them. So everybody who came, except for one person, was really positive.
This is what we call the feminist echo chamber.
And I didn't have any problems, and I posted pretty much everything anybody said. It was only one guy, and he wasn't too bad, but I didn't post what he said. I think that giving that message out in your videos is probably good because it deters people. I think that controls the tone. And I think if you can, you should manage the tone of your video. Now, some of these larger channels, it's just too hard. So that's fine. You know, you do your best, but if we're going to clean up the nastiness on YouTube, we have to behave better.
Which is ironic, after the incredibly offensive claims made in her video. I guess when she says, clean up YouTube, she's only talking about those she disagrees with.
We also have to make sure that we don't allow people to have a platform to behave bad. And what else did I want to say? I'm going to relink the email information for Irina Kromlova for Thunderfoot, so you guys can continue to look at that to send out emails. I think this is getting traction. And I say that because last night somebody tried to hack into my email, and my email server, made me start a new password today.
I love how she thinks that she's important enough for someone to hack her email account. It's so cute.
Because last night it just totally flipped out. Anyway, I'm not too worried about that. I think that, they're getting nervous. Maybe even Thunderfoot has been notified that there's an issue and he's getting his buddies to try to do something about it. They might take down my videos. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not concerned about that at all. My email has, offers from AARP to join because I'm 51 going on 52. And coupons for Geritol. I don't have precious diamonds in my email box. And, occasionally I get notices from Man Cheese and other blogs I follow. And I really like you to check her out. She's great. Anyway, Karen Straughan is a monster. She's not just bad, but she's perfectly comfortable saying something which could inspire a man to take his daughter to Pakistan or to some back alley and slice her genitals open. And you know how many of those girls die? I've read somewhere 30%. Now, if you can show me anything that says otherwise, I'll receive that information happily. But somewhere along the line, and I don't have that right now, I'll see if I can find it. And if I can find it, I'll put it in the low bar. She doesn't have a conscience. This is all about herself. Anyway, bewildered ape. He didn't jump the shark, and he didn't jump in the tank and fuck it. I think he just didn't know what he was up against, in a sense. And anyway, so I guess we're going to be looking forward to his videos where he explains his perspective. But I just wanted to do this addendum because I gave her way too much benefit of the doubt. Alright, YouTube, until my next video.
Well, on the bright side, I guess we now know what happens when a brother and a sister marry. If only they had used condoms. But before we move on, one more clip from Cenk.
And the women in Saudi Arabia want the burqa. I know, it's because of the culture that they grew up in. Karen, give me a thank you. Look, everything's going great, but you're not being reasonable. You're being ridiculous. Give me a thank you. Give me a thank you for feminists for getting your right to vote. Otherwise, stop voting and go make me a ham sandwich.
Yeah, Karen, go make us a ham sandwich and get me a beer while you're at it. Fuck. That was quick. I haven't even finished the video, and already Man Boobs has an article out about it. I think he must have me bugged or something. Next. So, do you remember this guy from last episode?
I don't really think that there's any easy way of saying this, but essentially, I think that there is a very, very big cultural war coming soon. And that cultural war is going to be between people who are on the right side of history and who think that men and women deserve equality, and those people who do not. I am, of course, talking about men's rights activists.
Well, he's back. Yeah, I know, first Laughing Witch, and now this guy. Anyway, he's made a couple of very short videos, asking MRAs extremely difficult questions. And by extremely difficult, I mean, extremely difficult in his mind. So I thought I'd have a go at answering them. It shouldn't be that hard. So let's look at the first one.
How can a movement be about equality if it uses a gendered pronoun in its title? Says the men's rights movement.
Okay, so this is a fair point, at least on the surface. If feminism gets criticized for using a gendered pronoun, then why not the men's rights movement, which does the same? The answer is very easy. Feminism claims to be working for equality for everyone. But the men's rights movement is working specifically on fixing those problems facing men, which are generally ignored. I guess an equivalency would be the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, for short. They are focused on the issues faced by one group. They don't work towards gay rights, or discrimination against Jews. They are focused on the issues faced by African Americans. And there is nothing wrong with that. I don't have a problem with any demographic organizing a group to represent themselves. But feminism doesn't claim to just represent females, it claims to represent everyone. Yet at the exact same time, it puts the issues of men dead last, and demonizes men's rights groups for trying to fix them. Effectively, it claims to be for everyone, for equality, but constantly puts women's issues first. Not to mention, actively demonizing males and masculinity. If feminism claimed to only focus on female issues, as the men's rights movement focuses only on male issues, then criticizing its gendered pronoun would not be valid. But as feminism claims to be for everyone, criticizing its gendered pronoun is a valid argument. Although to be honest, there are bigger fish to fry. I've never claimed that the men's rights movement is focused on everyone's issues or rights, because it's not. Which is why I call myself an egalitarian as well. And before some bewildered halfwit tries to twist my words, focusing on the issues and rights of one group, doesn't mean that you are against the rights, or dismiss the issues, of any other group. Fighting for animal rights, doesn't mean you want to kill all humans, for example. Next.
Why should we listen to male feminists? They're nothing but white knight manginas. Hey, check it out, we've got female men's rights activists. Makes us totally legit.
Okay, so once again, on the surface, this might seem like a fair point, but let's delve a little deeper, shall we? Let's start with the term mangina. A mangina is the gender opposite of what feminists refer to as internalized misogyny. Now I just did a search for the definition of internalized misogyny, and got redirected to internalized sexism. I'm unsure if this is a recent change, or has always been just another label for the same thing. Anyway, the definition reads: internalized sexism is defined as the involuntary belief by girls and women that the lies, stereotypes and myths about girls and women that are delivered to everyone in a sexist society are true. Girls and women, boys and men hear the sexist messages, lies and stereotypes about women over their entire lifetimes. It's interesting that the term internalized sexism is ungendered, but the definition is focused only on females. So let's flip the genders and apply this definition to manginas. Manginaism is defined as the involuntary belief by boys and men that the lies, stereotypes and myths about boys and men that are delivered to everyone by feminism are true. Boys and men hear the sexist messages, lies and stereotypes about men and masculinity over their entire lifetimes. Or to put it in more simplistic terms, a mangina is someone who has been taught that masculinity is bad, and therefore hates anything masculine about himself or other males. Males and masculinity are deemed the root cause of all the world's woes, while femininity is held as the shining example of all that's perfect and pure. In other words, the mangina sees men as corrupted, failed and imperfect women, and hates himself for it. And here is the perfect example. From Scott Aronson's blog. You also say that men in STEM fields, unlike those in the humanities and social sciences, don't even have the requisite vocabulary to discuss sex discrimination, since they haven't read enough feminist literature. Here I can only speak for myself. I've read at least a dozen feminist books, of which my favorite was Andrea Dworkin's Intercourse. I like Howls of Anguish much more than bureaucratic boilerplate, so in some sense, the more radical the feminist, the better I can relate. I check feministing, and even radfem blogs like, I Blame the Patriarchy. And yes, I've read many studies and task force reports about gender bias, and about the privilege and entitlement of the nerdy males that's keeping women away from science. Alas, as much as I try to understand other people's perspectives, the first reference to my privilege, is approximately where I get off the train, because it's so alien to my actual lived experience. But I suspect the thought that being a nerdy male might not make me privileged, that it might even have put me into one of society's least privileged classes, is completely alien to your way of seeing things. To have any hope of bridging the gargantuan chasm between us, I'm going to have to reveal something about my life, and it's going to be embarrassing. Sigh. Here's the thing, I spent my formative years, basically, from the age of 12 until my mid-20s, feeling not entitled, not privileged, but terrified. I was terrified that one of my female classmates would somehow find out that I sexually desired her, and that the instant she did, I would be scorned, laughed at, called a creep and a weirdo, maybe even expelled from school or sent to prison. You can call that my personal psychological problem if you want, but it was strongly reinforced by everything I picked up from my environment. To take one example, the sexual assault prevention workshops we had to attend regularly as undergrads, with their endless lists of all the forms of human interaction that might be sexual harassment or assault, and their refusal, ever, to specify anything that definitely wouldn't be sexual harassment or assault. I left each of those workshops with enough fresh paranoia and self-hatred to last me through another year. My recurring fantasy, through this period, was to have been born a woman, or a gay man, or best of all, completely asexual, so that I could simply devote my life to math, like my hero Paul Erdos did. Anything, really, other than the curse of having been born a heterosexual male, which for me, meant being consumed by desires that one couldn't act on or even admit without running the risk of becoming an objectifier or a stalker or a harasser or some other creature of the darkness. Of course, I was smart enough to realize that maybe this was silly, maybe I was overanalyzing things. So I scoured the feminist literature for any statement to the effect that my fears were as silly as I hoped they were. But I didn't find any. On the contrary, I found reams of text about how even the most ordinary male-female interactions are filled with microaggressions, and how even the most enlightened males, especially the most enlightened males, in fact, are filled with hidden entitlement and privilege and a propensity to sexual violence that could burst forth at any moment. Because of my fears of being outed as a nerdy heterosexual male, and therefore as a potential creep or sex criminal, I had constant suicidal thoughts. As Bertrand Russell wrote of his own adolescence, I was put off from suicide only by the desire to learn more mathematics. At one point, I actually begged a psychiatrist to prescribe drugs that would chemically castrate me. I had researched which ones, because a life of mathematical asceticism was the only future that I could imagine for myself. The psychiatrist refused to prescribe them, but he also couldn't suggest any alternative. My case genuinely stumped him. As well it might, for in some sense, there was nothing wrong with me. In a different social context, for example, that of my great-grandparents in the shtetl, I would have gotten married at an early age and been completely fine. All this time, I faced constant reminders that the males who didn't spend months reading and reflecting about feminism and their own shortcomings, even the ones who went to the opposite extreme, who engaged in what you called good old-fashioned ask-grabbery, actually had success that way. The same girls who I was terrified would pepper spray me and call the police if I looked in their direction, often responded to the crudest advances of the most Neanderthal of men by accepting those advances. Yet it was I, the nerd, and not the Neanderthals, who needed to check his privilege and examine his hidden entitlement. Scott Aronson is the perfect example of a male with internalized sexism. He's been taught through feminist ideology that he is bad due to his gender. He's been taught to hate himself. He has effectively been trained to be a mangina. I've often heard feminists claim that the word mangina is offensive to females, as it degrades a man by saying he's like a woman, and that he is somehow inferior because of this. But that's simply not the case. It's not that manginas are effeminate, or female-like, it's that they detest their masculinity due to internalized misandry. As Scott Aronson says, my recurring fantasy, through this period, was to have been born a woman, or a gay man, or best of all, completely asexual. If Scott or other men like him were not naturally masculine, then there wouldn't be a problem, but when feminist ideology runs rampant and starts to teach men that they are inferior by birth, and that masculinity is the cause of all the world's woes, then we have a problem. To be fair, I'm sure there are women out there as well with internalized misogyny. But that term tends to be thrown around a lot by feminists, to describe any female that doesn't subscribe to feminist ideology. And let's be honest here, our side probably does the same with the word mangina. Before moving on, if you are wondering about the text in bold from the screen caps, that I did not read. It was added by Scott Aronson later as a defense, after he was attacked by feminists for expressing his opinion. There was even an article in the New Statesman, by Laurie Penny, titled, On Nerd Entitlement. White male nerds need to recognize that other people had traumatic upbringings, too, and that's different from structural oppression. And from the article, women generally don't get to think of men as less than human, not because we're inherently better people, not because our magical feminine energy makes us more empathetic, but because patriarchy doesn't let us. We're really not allowed to just not consider men's feelings, or to suppose for an instant that a man's main or only relevance to us might be his prospects as a sexual partner. That's just not the way this culture expects us to think about men. Men get to be whole people at all times. Women get to be objects, or symbols, or alluring aliens whose responses you have to game to get what you want. Of course Laurie Penny ignores Scott's feelings, ignores that he was taught to think about himself in such a way due to feminist ideology, and instead blames patriarchy, while claiming that women still have it worse. Now, remember folks, feminism is for men too. But what about the word, white knight? Okay, this is rather simple. It's someone who will rush to protect a female, regardless of the actual situation. So if you had a woman being abusive, or violent towards a male, the white knight wouldn't do a thing, But if the male then turned around and started to do the same behavior in return, to the female, the white knights would intervene on the female's behalf. This behavior is often put down to the white knight wanting to get laid, but I personally think it's more complex. I think the white knight's motivation is validation through female approval, which would make white knights the polar opposite of MGTOW. So to summarize, a mangina is someone with internalized misandry. A white knight seeks validation through female approval. And not all male feminists are manginas or white knights. Although I suspect that most manginas have been influenced by feminist ideology. But a white knight seeking female approval doesn't necessarily have to have any involvement with feminism, as this behavior is older than feminist ideology, and on a larger scale within society. Now, let's refresh our memories by viewing the clip again, as I've been speaking for ages.
Why should we listen to male feminists? They're nothing but white knight manginas. Hey, check it out, we've got female men's rights activists. Makes us totally legit.
Bringing up the fact that there are female MRAs is usually in response to the claim that men's rights activists are all white heterosexual males, or that we hate all women. Obviously not all MRAs are white, straight, or male. And if we hated all women, then why would MRAs like Karen Straughan, or Alison Tiemann, or Crystal Garcia, or Rachel Edwards, just to name a few, be so popular? It's a fair question. Personally, I think the gender of the person making the argument is irrelevant. And it's the argument which is important. As I said earlier in this video, I have a great deal of respect for Karen, but none of that is based on her gender, it's based on her hard work and knowledge. So to sum up, responding to a claim that all MRAs are male, or that all MRAs hate all women, with the fact that there are female MRAs, is very different than judging the behavior of many of the male feminists out there. No one is denying that there are male feminists, at least no one I've ever seen. They are just judging the behavior of male feminists, just as feminists judge female MRAs as having internalized misogyny. So his argument is invalid, as it attempts to conflate two different things as being the same. Next. As I've said many times in the past, these videos tend to take a bit of time to put together. Which is why these days I try to stay out of long-winded back and forth debates in the comment sections of videos. I find that I'm far more capable of making a good argument in video format than in someone's comment section, and I also reach a much larger audience. Thus it's a much more productive use of my time. That's not to say you shouldn't take part in such debates, just that these days I try not to, as it's not the most efficient means of getting my message heard. But I am human, and occasionally get suckered into one of these debates, and have been trading blows with narrow-minded ideologues for a good portion of this week, on a video titled, MRAs Exploiting Male Victims. I doubt I'll have time to dissect the video itself this episode, but there is a good chance it will appear in a future episode in this series. But I do want to bring attention to one particular comment that was left yesterday. It reads, MRAs advocate that women should all be kept in the kitchen, homosexuals and transsexuals don't exist and non-whites are inferior. The idea that the MRM is a healthy community is a load of fucking bullshit. Go on any MRA board and see the exact opposite. They are sexists, they are racists, sorry they like to call themselves race realists, and they very anti-gay and anti-trans. Don't believe me, again, you are free to go on any MRA board right now. In fact, the owner of the biggest MRA website just said the other day that women should be allowed to be raped on private property to learn their place. So yeah, the idea that MRAs are open to everyone is a load of fucking shit. I don't think I've ever seen an MRA claim that all women should be kept in the kitchen. And thinking so would actually be counterproductive to the movement, as it locks men in the gender role of provider. I've also never heard an MRA claim that homosexuals and transsexuals don't exist. I have however heard rad femmes attack transsexuals, and claim that trans women shouldn't call themselves women.
For using the word. No.
Yeah, you just sexually harassed me, actually.
I'm harassed. Well, why don't you talk to the trans lady you want to talk to as opposed to this woman?
I would have, but then she turned to talk to someone else, and I was talking to her. You insane?
She was trying to talk to you. You kept interrupting her. She does not have a space.
Oh my God, they're delusional.
Right now, she does not have valid spaces like you do in our community to defend herself. You do, and you're talking over her. I don't understand how you as a marginalized person can further marginalize somebody.
How do you marginalize someone by saying, look, everyone needs space sometimes. Sometimes you have space for other people.
You are invalidating the existence of women.
No, I'm not.
That's what you're doing.
Bullshit.
You're sitting there saying that, like, you need space from trans women. Trans women shouldn't be excluded. They should be included. So you're saying right now that trans women aren't women. That's what you're telling me. No, please answer that question. Answer that question right now.
You can't answer that question because
as women. Okay, no. There is
female. Is she such a
okay. All right.
And that is the issue. She matters to females. This is not rocket science.
It's funny, I never see this level of debate or argument in the MRM over who has the right to call themselves a particular gender, yet we are the ones who somehow get labeled as anti-trans. The commenter then goes on to say that we think non-whites are inferior. Once again, this is something I've never heard an MRA say. The commenter also claims we use the term race realists. Once again, this is a term I've never heard from an MRA. I did in fact have to look the term up. It seems to mean that there are distinct differences between the races other than superficial physical differences, like skin color, or cultural differences. This is something I can honestly say I have never heard from any MRA I know. Now, may there be individuals out there who are racist, or sexist, or homophobic? Sure, as you will find in any group, but not in any significant numbers, and no one of influence could be classed as these things. And then the idiot goes on to say, in fact, the owner of the biggest MRA website just said the other day that women should be allowed to be raped on private property to learn their place. Now the biggest MRA website is AVFM. And the owner of that site is Paul Elam. But the person who left the ignorant and uninformed comment wasn't talking about Paul and AVFM. No, he was actually talking about an article on Return of Kings, by pickup artist, Roosh V. Yep, this idiot doesn't know the difference between MRAs and PUAs. And this is the same person who in another comment thread accused me of constructing a straw feminist. He's never actually engaged feminists who have said that. He is building a straw feminist, used mostly from quote mining feminists to make them seem radical. I bet he would say people like Anita Sarkeesian are radical when she espouses literally Feminism 101. The idiocy of these people is astounding. But unfortunately this isn't just some half-wit making shit up in the comments section of a YouTube video. This shit actually starts in what passes for the media these days. For example, from the Raw Story. Misogynist blogger, make rape on private property illegal so women can have learning experiences. From the article. The founder of a website that is popular with so-called men's rights activists said this week that the solution to the problem of rape in the United States was to decriminalize the violent taking of a woman on private property. And as always, once the lie was out there, it inevitably spread like wildfire. From Breaking News USA. Men's rights activist, make rape legal on private property. From ifonlynews.com. Men's rights blogger, make rape legal on private property so women can have learning experiences. From Addicting Info. Men's rights activist thinks rape should be legal on private property. From XO Jane. MRA Roosh V wants to legalize rape to teach women a lesson. His little rapist pipe dream will never come to actual fruition, but it highlights the pure contempt with which MRAs view women. From Free Thought Blogs. MRA wants to legalize rape on private property. From DemocraticUnderground.com. Men's rights asshole wants to legalize rape. Seriously. And from the article. Yet another mama threw away the child and raised the afterbirth chuckle fuck demonstrates why the men's rights activists are all a bunch of criminally insane loser boys. From the Inquisitor. Anti-feminist wants rape legalized on private property to teach women a lesson. And from the article. He sees himself as a leader for men's rights advocacy. Seriously? He's a fucking critic of the men's rights movement, not the fucking leader. But then why should something called the Inquisitor actually do any inquiring? I guess that would be asking too much, wouldn't it? And from Liberal America. Blogger says rape should be legal on private property. And from the article. What brought the bile out in me was a story highlighting a guy by the name of Rush Vorik. Rush, which rhymes with douche, and is that ever appropriate, is a blogger who has a following in the so-called men's rights movement. Men's rights? What exactly does that mean? I think all people, men, women, old, young, black, white, should have rights, and we should all be equal. Isn't that supposed to be the true goal of America? Men don't have enough rights in the United States. We control virtually everything. Now I should point out an interesting little fact that some of you may have missed. As I said, this started with the Raw story, which only mentions men's rights once. Let's look at it again. The founder of a website that is popular with so-called men's rights activists said this week that the solution to the problem of rape in the United States was to decriminalize the violent taking of a woman on private property. You'll notice that the author never actually said Rush was an MRA, he just said Rush's website was popular with MRAs, something in itself that is disputable. But this is a trick often used by low-life journalistic scum, to insinuate something, without explicitly saying it, and allowing the reader to join the dots and come to the false conclusion themselves. Which clearly worked considering the number of hacks who took the bait, and then regurgitated the lie embellished to the point that Rush is not only now an MRA, but also, apparently, our leader. Our opposition rarely attacks us on our actual positions. They instead try to strawman us, by associating us with other groups, like PUAs, or even the KKK, as crazy as it sounds. Or falsely associating individuals, like Elliot Rodger, with us. I have to wonder, if we are all really so bad, if we are all such terrible people, then why do they need to falsely associate us with outsiders, to try to condemn us? Why not just use our own words against us? At best this is sheer ignorance. At worst it's a dirty trick done by ideological arseholes. Unfortunately, this is the current state of so-called journalistic credibility. So please, give me a moment to send a heartfelt message to all the journalistic hacks. To all the cut-and-paste half-wits who never check the facts. To the scum-sucking low-lifes who care nothing for the truth. To the ideological fucktards, bewildered and uncouth. To those of you, who use ruthless propaganda. And whose clueless brains resort to lies and slander. I would just like to take this moment to say, fuck you. Fuck you all. Next.
Hi, I'm Keen, and I'm here to teach you how to be a member of the men's rights movement. The first thing you're going to need is a dorky hat. Now I don't mean cute dorky or adorkable, I mean creepy dorky. People should feel like there's cockroaches crawling under their skin every time they look at you. Ah, perfect. This hat also has the added bonus of looking kinda like a penis head, which you wear on your head.
Dude. If your dick looks like a fedora, then you seriously have some messed up shit happening down there.
Showing the world that reason and logic cannot stand in the way of your testosterone.
I get the feeling that this guy doesn't have any of the things he just mentioned.
Second, you're gonna need to start arguments. Like, everywhere. The best way to do this is to be rude and obnoxious wherever you go, because the best way to gain the sympathy of the masses is to make sure everyone despises you. Now, you may find that this particular movement has no actual evidence to back up any of its claims.
Clearly this guy has never seen any of my videos.
Making the argument part of arguing kinda difficult. When you get to the part of the argument where normal people would start citing statistics, or studies, or personal experience, or the experience of friends, you're going to realize that you don't actually have any of these. And your reasoning for believing in this cause is because you're a whiny little brat whose chronic unattractiveness and constant rejection has festered into a hatred of women, and whose denial of his own inadequacy has caused him to blame feminism for all of his problems.
Ironic, isn't it? This guy accuses us of having no evidence, or facts, yet all he has is ad homs and straw fedoras.
Not to worry. Instead of citing legitimate sources, you can just make them up. On second thought, why go to all the trouble to make up words and numbers and things? That would require thinking. Instead, just bluntly restate your original argument except in caps lock with curse words thrown in for effect. Now, if the feminists you're arguing against start smashing your uncited claims with well-documented research and numerous sources and actual experience in the field or real life, just
what fucking alternate reality is this guy from? Seriously?
stick your fingers in your ears and make the la-la sound, because if you deny that evidence exists, it will magically go away. Contrary to popular belief, the men's rights movement is not actually sexist. So to make sure that you don't come off as sexist, pepper your argument with as many sexist and misogynistic slurs as you possibly can. Now, this may seem kind of counterintuitive, but you can trust me. I have a penis.
I think that might be up for debate.
The next thing you gotta do is just stop showering. I mean, this isn't really a requirement, but if you're thinking about joining this movement, you probably don't have any friends anyway, so no one's gonna miss your personal hygiene. Now you may be wondering, how does the men's rights movement actually fight for the rights of men if all they ever do is bash feminism, squash the rights of women, and blame victims? What are they doing for the real issues faced by men as well as women, like limiting gender roles and transphobia and hypermasculinity that is forced on boys at a young age? Issues that are all addressed by the feminist movement. And since feminism is fighting for gender equality not only to close the wage gap between men and women and combat sexual harassment, but also to empower men to embrace their feminine side and not be ashamed of themselves, wouldn't it be smarter just to join the feminist movement instead of joining a movement that does absolutely nothing but spew slander and negativity?
Reject the masculine and embrace the feminine. Got it.
Just like that, he unveiled his beautiful man pussy, his glorious mangina.
If you're asking this question, you've missed the point of the men's rights movement. See, it's not a movement to actually change anything or inform people or make anything better for anyone. It's an outlet for insecure boys whose pent-up feelings of inadequacy and self-loathing have not only caused them to promote the oppression and mockery of an entire gender in a feeble attempt to justify their feelings of their own superiority, but to blatantly lie about doing it.
My head, I'd be scratching while my thoughts were busy hatching if I only had a brain.
It is a movement that allows them to prop up their fragile masculinity by blaming all their problems on women. Problems that are caused by the same type of people that they are bent on becoming. It is a movement for selfish brats who view women as trophies and are baffled by the fact that they actually have their own human emotions. It is a movement of boys who rather like the privileges their gender provides and don't want anyone else to have them. It is a movement of boys who brutally attack women but feel victimized when called on it. Men's rights activist is a misnomer. Not only are they not fighting for anyone's rights, not only are they not active in any sense of the word, they are not men. They are whining, sniveling cowards who have yet to come to terms with the fact that the world does not revolve around them. So just follow these simple steps and you'll be on your way to being a pathetic excuse for a men's rights activist. That's what I meant to say. Shut up.
And if you thought that steaming pile of dog shit was bad, wait until you see this little gem. Great. It would now seem that we are being stereotyped as pedophile furries. Who knew so many female teachers were actually men's rights activists? From the article. In sentencing, Judge Braddock said that while the woman had been the boy's teacher, she did not feel that position had been used to cultivate the relationship, or groom the boy. The conduct was seriously illegal, and totally inappropriate, but not in my view predatory, Judge Braddock said. She was sad and lonely, and found comfort and support from his attentions no matter how bizarre that might be. She did not manipulate him. The poor 37-year-old teacher. Being taken advantage of by that evil 14-year-old student. Maybe we should ban female teachers, for their own protection, or maybe just ban male students. As it would seem, In the eyes of the justice system, 14-year-old male students have far more agency than 37-year-old female teachers. Of course, if we reversed the genders, and a 37-year-old male teacher said he slept with a 14-year-old female student because he was lonely, do you think he'd get a suspended sentence? Yeah, somehow I don't think so. But let's sum up what lessons we have learned this episode. Apparently Karen being against male genital mutilation means she is brainwashing men to have their daughters' genitals sliced open in overseas back alleys. We learned that if a man is taught to hate himself through feminist ideology, he should just shut up, because it's all the fault of the patriarchy anyway, and women always have it worse. We learned that the notorious pickup artist, Rush V, has become the leader of the men's rights movement, somehow, to the surprise of everyone within the men's rights movement. We learned that men's rights activists wear penis-shaped fedoras, and don't wash, and this somehow has something to do with masculinity and testosterone. And finally we learned that MRAs are secretly all furries, and want to fuck underage girls. But the most important thing of all that we learned this episode, is that our opposition are willing to go to any lengths to demonize us, to try to shame us, to associate us with false stereotypes, to manipulate our words, to use ad homs in place of facts, to use every dirty trick they have in their book. Because they lack any credible arguments against our actual positions. So on that note folks, until next time, don't drink the poison Kool-Aid. Oh, and by the way Karen, I'm still waiting on that sandwich.
And go make me a ham sandwich. I recently published a proposal called How to Stop Rape, and that suggests that if we legalize rape, women will be more careful with their bodies and not go into the private rooms of men that they don't want to have sex with. If you missed this article, then click below in the comments where you can read it in full. You would think that any idea or proposal that would decrease the amount of harm to women and decrease the number of rape would be welcomed by everyone. I mean, who doesn't want to decrease rape? Well, apparently everyone, because the rage that I got from the article was intense. There were stories in Raw Story, in XO Jane, in The Mirror. I received hundreds of angry comments on Twitter. You can go see the comments on the original article. They're still frothing over it. If my intention was to decrease harm to women, and I provided, I believe, the arguments that show how legalizing rape would definitely decrease the rapes that we are seeing, including the fake rape of when the girl felt regret the next day, why would they be against this? Why wouldn't they want less women to be raped? I'm not saying legalize rape so more men can rape. I'm saying legalize rape so less women would be raped. Let's imagine right now that some academics and researchers read my idea and thought, you know what, maybe he has a point. So let's do the necessary research to see if his policy proposal would, in fact, reduce rape. And let's imagine that a year after the research that they do, they can prove, yeah, Rush was right. Legalizing rape would definitely decrease rape. Less women would be harmed. Let's sign off on this and make legislation which would legalize rape in a private room, which would now require a woman not to self-drug herself with alcohol so much that she's unable to judge a man's worth, where she's unable to know if she wants to have sex with a man or not before entering a private room. Would people be happy about that? Of course not. The comments that you are seeing now would show that the rage would be 10 times as large. Everyone would say that this is a law that is anti-women and misogynist and the world is ending and so on. So this is where you may now be confused,
because I thought promoting rape culture is meant to protect women, is to keep them safe. But here we may have a policy which keeps them safer. So where is this conflict coming from? And I can tell you exactly where it's coming from. My policy to reduce rape is a thought experiment which shows that rape culture is not about keeping women safe. The response shows that this rape hysteria and all the new laws, such as yes means yes law in California, such as the kangaroo courts we're seeing in universities, is really a system to persecute the most amount of men possible. The goal of this is to keep men in a pre-crime state where any man can be plucked out of his normal life and be charged with rape for a rape that did not actually happen. He can go to jail, he can lose his job, he can be kicked out of school, he can be shamed on the internet so he can't find future employment. Rape culture hysteria is not about keeping women safe. It's not about decreasing the amount of rape, real or fake, that a woman faces. It's about persecuting the largest number of men. My suggestion to legalize rape clearly shows that people don't care if women are raped or not. They just want more men to be on the hook for any time a woman is upset, anytime she feels guilty, anytime she feels like a slut. If right now your good intentions suggest a policy that would decrease rape, but not increase the amount of persecution men face, it will be hated on. It won't pass at all, because the goal is not to decrease rape, to keep women safe. The goal is to increase the danger that men are in, to increase the harm that men face every day. So therefore, if you want to introduce a rape policy in today's cultural climate, it better increase the persecution that men face. It better put more men on the hook for behavior that for thousands of years was deemed consensual, but now suddenly is not. You must now push policies, if you want it to be received by the mainstream, that criminalize normal male behavior and erase all responsibility that a woman has. In other words, treat men like a criminal, all of them, treat women like a child. If you can come up with a policy that does that, man, you will be voted into office. So consider that. We're living in a climate right now that just wants to persecute men. I mean, this is just an anti-male environment that we are in. So you must stay skeptical. Don't believe in rape accusations unless you see a confession from the man or physical evidence that suggests a rape took place. And also be very careful with the women that you have sex with. If a woman ever utters the phrase rape culture, if she is giving you talking points that come straight out of Jezebel or Exo Jane, run away, because your life is not worth mixing with a girl who, a day after having consensual sex with you, decides to play the rape card in a culture that unfortunately will accept her rape card. So keep that in mind. And if you like this video, be sure to hit subscribe. Don't forget to read the original How to Stop Rape proposal that I wrote and all the angry comments that go along with it. So have a good one.